Hello, today's painting is going to be a sunset based on a photo I took while travelling through the Tanami Desert about 10 years ago. The Tanami Desert is in Central Australia, partway between Halls Creek and Alice Springs. This relatively simple painting will be done in two steps. First will be the sky taken down to the ground, and then we'll paint the silhouette of the trees. Watercolours don't have to be very complex, but they do need to be painted confidently and with nice clean washes. So let's have a go at this one. Hi, my name is Joe Cartwright. Welcome to my studio. My aim with these videos is to help you paint better watercolours. This series is all about the basics. If you're a beginner or have found painting with watercolours challenging, then please join in, as these videos are for you. And remember, if you like what you see, please subscribe and hit the notification bell so you'll be informed of each new video I produce. Also, if you have any questions or requests, please leave them in the comment section below. I read them all. From the photo you can see that the sky is going to go from a deep violet to a cool orange, slightly burnt orange. The sunset in my painting will be in this area, so the colours will get darker as you move away from that point. Like our previous painting, the dimensions of the paper I'm working on is 11 inches by about 7.5 inches, or 28.5 centimetres by about 19 centimetres, or what we call an eighth sheet. And I'm using rough paper. So first step, we'll wet the back of the paper. And this will let the paper absorb the moisture, which will force it to expand and then flatten, which gives us a very nice smooth surface to paint on. I'm wetting the back, I don't want to wet the front. Go. There we go. Just remove some of this excess moisture. And now we'll mix our colours. So the sky is just one big graded wash. So in that wash we'll have a violet, we'll have the orange, and some variation in between. I'm going to mix 3 puddles of paint. And the first one we'll use to mix the violet, which is about half to 2/3 of the sky. So we'll start with my Winsor Blue red shade. And we'll add some permanent rose. And because that's still a relatively bright colour, and this is a sunset, I will add a small amount of yellow. Just enough to dull the colour but not turn it green. And that's still quite blue, so I'm going to add more of the permanent rose. And now the yellow. Yellow, being the complement of purple, will grey the sky. Might go back to just a little bit more blue. The other thing you need to know with watercolor is they dry lighter and they dry duller, so you have to make allowances for that. I'm going to add just a little bit more paint. Just a, and I'm slowly sneaking up on the color I want. And I think that's good. So that'll do for our sky. I'll just clean my brush. And I didn't want that paint to, these two colors to mix. So here I'm going to mix some permanent rose and a small amount of the Winsor lemon. Now when I come to paint this, some of this blue will mix in with this color anyway, so I don't necessarily have to add a lot of blue at this stage. It's good. And you don't have to be totally accurate with these colors. You take a picture with your camera and then 5 minutes later you'll have a totally different sunset. So here is the brighter orange. So in this case I'll start with the yellow. And I'll add just a small amount of the permanent rose. That's pretty good. There we go. And that's good. That's nice. That's a nice color. So there are our three colors. Now I'm going to just go over the back of this paper again. As you can see, it's still not quite sitting flat, so it can absorb some more moisture. There we go. Now I'll gently lift that up and I'll wet the board. There we go. And that's sitting nice and flat, and it's totally dry in the top. It's cool to the touch, so it tells me there's plenty of moisture in there, and it will give me a lot more time to create a nice clean wash. So we have our colours mixed and we're about to start painting. The sun is setting in this general direction, so I'm going to have cooler colours in the distance, and they'll get warmer and lighter as we get closer to where the sun is. Now, because the paints continue to flow down the paper, you have to be careful when you're using these darker paints. You have to be careful to give them plenty of room to keep flowing, or they'll totally discolour your lighter colours. Sometimes to get around that, you can flip the board around and actually paint the sky from the ground up. So you could turn it around and do it this way, and both techniques are fine. In this case, I'm just going to paint like this, mainly because I've got this on the board and it's already set up for this position with my cameras, so I'll just paint it this way. Let's start. Pick up the blue, and that might be just a little bit too strong, so I'm going to add some water. There we go. There's more blue over here. That's great. Maybe just a little bit more. Remember, it's all going to come back down to here. Now I'm going to pick up some of the pink, or the permanent rose. Just a little bit there. Then one brush load of the orange. Now, this room is actually quite warm today, so I can see that the paint is starting to dry very quickly. So I'm going to get my spray bottle and I hold it up like this, so it's actually spraying in that direction. But the lightest drops get caught in the air in the room and then gently settle on my painting, and that will help keep this area workable. So now clean the brush, pick up some more of this lighter paint. There we go. And we'll bring that down to ground level. Now I'm going to darken this some more. Maybe a little bit more here. There we go. So this is what we call a graded wash. So we're going from the deep blue to the pinks to the orange, and then the brighter orange down here. And there's nothing else to do with it. Now, you do need to keep an eye on it so that all this blue doesn't wash down there. So at this point I can turn this around and just let it sit this way. And what will happen now is these oranges and reds will flow into the blue and keep this area reasonably bright. I'm just going to adjust this. There we go. Because I want to keep this nice and smooth. And that gives us a lovely transition that isn't, when you're doing a painting like this, you don't want to see sort of streaky lines in the sky. You want a very graded wash with a very smooth gradient from one colour to another colour. And that you get by making sure you have enough paint in your brush so that it's wet enough that they flow into one another. You have to be a little bit careful with water on the side that it doesn't flow back in and give you the cauliflower. In a minute I'll go and dry that, but I like to let it settle first. There we go. This is dried, and you can see how much lighter this is dried now. So when you're painting with watercolors, there are times you have to be quite brave with the strength of your mixtures, or else at the end of the day you look at your result and you think that wasn't as strong as what I would have liked. Okay, so now all we have to do is paint the trees, and as with all of these paintings for this Absolute Beginners course, we're using the same three colors throughout the course. So we have to mix a dark color that has some variation in it, because there is light. These colors in the sky act like a torch in the sky, and they would be reflected in the foliage. So try to have some variation in your color. If you just mix a pure black, the foliage can look a bit dull, so I like to vary the mixture a bit. I've got this dark blue here, and that'll form the basis of what we're going to do in the foreground. I'll just test that color. I need to make it quite a bit stronger than that. So what I'll do, I think I'll get rid of most of this at this stage. And we'll get, because I have a lot of paint here, rather than trying to darken this whole big puddle, it'll be easier just to move some of the paint over here and then make that quite strong in tone by adding more paint but not more water, and then I can modify it once I start painting with it. So let's add start with some of the Permanent Rose, the Winsor Blue, and just a little bit of the yellow, which will create a hint of green in some of these areas, some of this mixture. So as I said, I intend to have some variation in this dark silhouette shape that I'm going to be painting. Okay, so I've got this puddle, and it's dark enough for my purposes, and I'm going to have a big eucalyptus tree here, and when I'm painting trees, I basically just look at the shape of the tree as a connected shape, rather than, I don't look at the detail in terms of individual leaves or anything like that. And eucalypts tend not to be very regular in shape, so that's something else that I'll work to avoid. So I've got my size 12 brush, pick up some of my paint, drag the brush through the edge of my palette just to take some of that excess moisture out, and very gently bring the brush down, and as soon as it touches the paper, then lift it up a fraction. There we go. Paint over the top, and that'll tend to make this tree appear to be much bigger. And I want to leave a lot of little gaps or bird holes in the tree to let the sky show through. And you can see these shapes are all connected. You don't want little dabs everywhere. There we go. Down here, and maybe just a bit more. That'll do. And then, before that dries too much, we'll paint some of the branches. bring that down. And by painting the branches while the foliage is still wet, you get a nice connection between the two. There we go. That's good enough. The important thing is not to keep overworking this. And then along here, we've got all the rest of the foliage. There's another tree over this side. It's a smaller tree, so I might use my size 8 brush for that. Remember, I don't want to lose all the sky either. That's the big part. I'm going to throw in just a little bit of this paint, make it just a bit stronger in tone. There we go. All right, now let's go back to this one. We'll run this one to this edge. And by painting to the edge, it gives your painting a feeling like there's more space, because you're sort of saying there's more trees here, there's more trees up there, there's more trees over to this side, rather than just painting a little tree that's isolated. Very lightly touching the paper. That'll do. There. All these shapes are going to merge together with the foliage along the ground. There we go. We'll have another little one over here, maybe smaller. So I'm always varying the shapes to add visual interest. There we go. These are almost shrubs, but there we go. And then we're going to paint all the other shrubs and bushes. And what I'll do is I'm going to start with, just use my size 8 brush to create that texture. Just the impression of all these other bushes, and might make this tree a bit bigger. And when you're painting, you're always making these design decisions. Might vary the colour, add a little bit more pink and a bit of green to this. A little bit more moisture. So this colour, while the camera might look all one colour, there's a lot of variety in there. Very lightly, just skimming over the surface of the paper. Might make that a bit more blue. And even here, leave the odd little gap. And then I'll pick up my bigger brush and paint through that. And you can see now why it's important to mix plenty of paint, because even though I mixed quite a big puddle there, I've used it all. maybe a couple of birds. Throw one more. If you have an area that you think is too solid, if you've lost any bird holes, you can get the edge of your fingernail, or if you like, grab a piece of a credit card and this curved bit of your card, and you can just retrieve some of those highlights. So if an area is too solid, I can use the credit card to just divide that shape up a little bit. If you do it too soon while the paint is too wet, you'll end up with a dark line, because the credit card will scrape the sizing off the surface of your paper, and the wet paint will fall in, and underneath the sizing the paper is quite absorbent, and you'll get quite a dark line. Now you can do that, you can use that to your advantage. Sometimes you want a dark line, in which case you go in while it's quite wet, but if you want a lighter line, then you have to wait till a lot of that surface moisture has gone, but the paint is still a little bit damp. I usually aim for somewhere in between, so you'll get some where the scraping stays light and other areas where it gets a little bit darker. And if you're careful, you can still go back in and adjust it. Don't want to use too much, but there. And I don't want it to be too regular either. Now, don't use the edge like this, or you'll end up with very thin branches that probably look more like wires than branches. Same here. But this is fine, I really don't need to do very much. Anyway, there's our finished painting. All it needs now is to dry it and then sign it. As you can see, it doesn't take very long to do something like this. Well, I hope you enjoyed that, and I will see you for our next painting.